Welcome to this joint press conference from OECD Secretary General Mathias Cormann and Economic Affairs Minister Katherina Reiche. The Secretary General will present the OECD Economic Report for Germany today, and Minister Reiche will comment on it, and then you will have an opportunity to ask questions. I think we have about until 11:50, 11:55. So please, questions, stick to the topic. Secretary General, thank you very much. Good morning. Minister Reiche, dear colleagues, thank you very much for the cordial welcome to Berlin this morning. It's a great pleasure to be here to present the OECD Economic Report for Germany. The standard of living in Germany is still high. Per capita GDP is 16% higher than the OECD average, and as you can see here, it is higher than that of France, Italy, and the United Kingdom. Behind the US and China and the US, Germany is the world's third biggest economy. But over the last 5 to 10 years, the German economy basically has stopped growing. The real per capita GDP is roughly at the same level as 8 years ago. The energy price crisis has had particularly severe impacts because Germany is reliant on natural gas and it has a global energy-intensive manufacturing sector. Germany, the Eurozone, and the US other parts have US and Eurozone have grown faster than Germany in recent years, and the question is, how can Germany catch up? So a positive point is that inflation is pretty much at the 2.0 target level of the ECB. It's fallen back to that. In May, inflation was 2.1%. Together with increasing nominal wages, this bolsters domestic consumption. In Germany, policy uncertainty has been fairly high for a few years now, particularly with regard to energy, fiscal, and climate policy. And this has worsened the business climate, investment. So the tariffs of the US are creating more uncertainties and have increased these pressures. A positive factor, though, is that the most recent firm of the budgetary rules in Germany, making possible increased defense expenditure, has decreased domestic uncertainty. And you can see it's gradually going in the right direction. The relatively quick formation of a new government has also helped to reduce policy uncertainty in Germany. According to our projections, real GDP growth will be 0.4% this year and rise to 1.2% next year due to higher defense spending and public spending on infrastructure. But that will also increase public debt. Inflation, an average of 2.4% this year and 2.1% next year. Our economic report points out 4 political priorities to increase resilience and to boost growth in Germany. Firstly, optimize public finances. The reform of the budgetary rules will make higher spending possible in important growth-related areas such as infrastructure. Last year, public investment minus depreciation was 0.2% of GDP, and that was the second lowest of OECD countries for which we have data. In every year since 2020, net investment in Germany has been lower than the OECD average. But the latest reform of fiscal rules is a step in the right direction to enable higher public investment to take place. Further measures are needed to ensure that expenditure takes place quickly and effectively and efficiently, and this involves, for example, expediting permitting procedures for projects. This is an important complement to the expenditure. In order to ensure the viability of public sector finance, national and EU budgetary rules must be complied with, and the higher defense spending and the spending on infrastructure must be combined with increased efficiency in the coming years. Faster digitalization of public administration and more use of spending reviews with clear savings targets would help to reduce the growth in expenditure and lead to better prioritization of expenditure. The public spending on pension and health and social care will be 21%, will rise from 21% this year to 25% in 2045. And since life expectancy is also rising, Germany will need to increase its incentives for older people to stay in work. The gradual abolition of fiscal early retirement incentives and also need to tackle further training needs for older workers. The quality of supply in the health sector could also be a way to improve more outpatient care and to improve digitalization in the health sector. A second policy priority for Germany is to boost competition and corporate dynamism. Promoting growth of successful companies and the market entry of new companies is crucial in order to make full use of the potential of the private sector and to increase the productivity, potential productivity growth. Young companies in Germany are growing more slowly in Germany than in other European and OECD countries, and the corporate dynamism has declined more in Germany than in other OECD countries. In the manufacturing sector, the market entry rate of 4.3% has dropped to 3.2%. This is more than in other OECD countries, where they've dropped from 4.1% to 3.7%. The bureaucratic barriers for companies and the regulatory barriers to competition must be reduced. In Germany, it's still more complex to set up a company than it is on average in OECD countries, even though there have been certain progress in recent times, as our indicators show here, or indicators of product market regulation show here. ensuring the neutrality of public companies compared with private companies is central for fair competition. Public companies have a greater spectrum of activities and worse governance than in the OECD average, and work needs to be done here still. Greater powers for the Bundeskartellamt to ensure that regulatory authorities do not restrict competition is important. And we also need clear rules and subsidies for public companies. Basically, the recent tightening of the Lobby Register Act has meant that lobbying our work has become clearer, and this has helped to level the playing field for all companies. The overcoming of the skills shortage is the third policy priority in order to boost economic growth. Germany must expand its labor supply and to promote growth and to ensure that the skills shortage doesn't slow down the necessary digital and ecological transition. German companies are having great problems finding the skilled people they need in order to act and innovate and grow. According to a recent OECD study, 36% of German employers have said they have great problems recruiting people, compared with 25% in the OECD average. Increasing the qualifications of workers through lifelong learning is an important way to overcome the skill shortage. On average, fewer adults in Germany take part in further vocational training than on average in the EU. Plans to introduce individual learning accounts in which points can be collected are welcome. In addition to this, we need uniform quality standards and certification for further training courses, and the existing financing available for adult education needs to be expanded to informal learning as well. It's important to have enough skilled workers for the future, and according to PISA, the performance of the 15-year-olds at school have declined severely between 2018 and 2023. Reading, writing, maths have, in the PISA average, dropped from 500 to 482, and that corresponds to a year of school education. The introduction of an obligatory high-grade preschool year and the extension of the school day at elementary school would improve this, including more hours for teachers and more hours of teaching on basic skills. A reform of the joint taxation of couples would increase the incentives for second earners to work. At the moment, compared with other OECD countries, there are much higher income tax rates for second earners in Germany than throughout the OECD, and this particularly tends to deter women from working as much as they could. And at present, 36% of all active women are working part-time, compared to 24% on the OECD average. In order to reduce negative incentives to work for women, the marginal tax rates should be cut for second earners, for example, with a real splitting system in which spouses are taxed individually, but you can have transfers between the partners. Fourthly, promoting regional development. The targeted measures are necessary in order to help regions with less growth and lower incomes. The differences in per capita GDP between districts and towns and cities with lowest income in Germany and the highest income is almost twice as much as the OECD average for the OECD countries for which we have data. It's important to provide incentives for economic activity in certain regions, but these promotional measures need to be coordinated better with other measures. And there should be a focus on infrastructure, urban development, and also this should be combined with national support for certain technologies. Improving administrative capacities at local level is also important in order to improve investments and regional disparities. Over the last 25 years, mostly the municipalities have lost out in terms of net investment, even though they account for a lot of the investment involved. And they need to have more capacities for example, project management. Faster digitalization of public administration and improvement of the skills of the workers in public administration is important. In order to improve the administrative capacities and the quality of public services. Close cooperation between the municipalities, for example, through joint procurement initiatives, could increase the efficiency of spending. The expansion of the supply of high-speed internet connections throughout the country is important to ensure that companies can fully use digital technologies throughout the country. The average download speed in Germany is 130 megabytes per second. Is slower than in many other OECD countries. And the improvement in the digital structure requires more competition and removal of impediments to access to fiber optical connections. Also, we need faster permitting procedures. Finally, Germany is an economic heavyweight with massive potential for new, strong growth. The increase in spending, the promotion of competition, the strengthening of the labour market, and the promotion of regional development are all important policy levers in order to foster economic growth and to lastingly improve standard of living. Minister, thank you very much for this opportunity to briefly introduce us now. Thank you. Minister, thank you very much, Mathias Cormann, for presenting the country-specific report from the OECD, the Germany report, the Germany CAP chapter. I'm very grateful for being so clear in what you say, addressing the points you believe is necessary coincides with a lot of the agenda that we are addressing in this ministry and in this federal government. Two important points. We need more growth again after years of stagnation. So we need investment in productivity, and we need to become more competitive. So I therefore like to address this because apart from external shocks which affect all European and OECD member states, you tell us what our homework is very clearly, because the OECD report shows that we are able ourselves to undertake structural reforms to improve per capita GDP over the next few years. Many of the measures proposed by the OECD coincide with the projects of this government. The OECD, for example, recommends a tax reform. It recommends corporation and income tax reform. It recommends clear reduction in bureaucracy so that the big investment package, which you basically like, but you combine that with the need for structural reforms in parallel, because otherwise the effects of the special fund will be lost. You mentioned the high energy prices, which we are trying to reduce. You advocate strongly for an increase in gainful activity, a use of the labour potential. I want to talk about that as well. You call for flexibility on the labour market, and you call for an innovation campaign. Let me address some of these points. All the reforms which you call for and which the federal government has set out in the coalition agreement are necessary so that Germany can have more productivity growth again. Since 2000, labor productivity in the US has risen almost twice as fast as in Germany, largely driven by the technology sector. Factors for productivity are the skill shortage, demographics, the need for further training and education, we need skilled immigration, also a lack of innovation, a lack of corporate dynamism, lack of finance for startups, and in recent times the energy costs. In the OECD comparison, our corporate taxation is too high. The combined corporate taxation rate is almost 30% at the moment, 29.93, and the only higher corporate tax rates are in Colombia, Mexico, Australia, and in the USA they're about 25.6%. Labor market costs are very high in the OECD comparison, particularly induced by high welfare spending. So I'm very grateful for the recommendations which the report makes to us. The OECD shows us how money for public investment can be spent well, how to prioritize public spending, how to increase the efficiency of spending through a systematic spending review, and rigorous evaluation measures. All of this could save billions each year. For this, these recommendations are crucial because the Special Fund for Infrastructure and Climate Action temporarily offers financial scope to overcome a lack of investment from the past and to boost public investment and to leverage private capital. And particularly the latter point, that public capital should be complement to leverage private sector capital. The focus here is on traditional infrastructure like roads and rails, climate action, but also on research infrastructure and education. A decisive point, as the OECD recommends, is that we need to have you spend the money efficiently. And that means that we need to combine the special fund with structural reforms. Reviving corporate dynamism and productivity growth is something the OECD regards as crucial, and here we need more competition. Competition is the central element of the social market economy. We need to develop the regulatory framework and to make rules and regulations more pro-growth and more pro-competition. And we'll have to do that through effective enforcement of competition law. And so the resources of the Bundeskartellamt have to be used in a targeted way. Not least, we want to raise the levels for the registration of mergers. Reducing bureaucracy, that comes throughout the report. Almost every OECD country has to cope with bureaucracy, but I think that that Germany is a special example of especially large amount of conditions and documentation requirements, reporting requirements and bureaucracy, but that the federal government now has a clear bureaucracy reduction rate target, 25% lower bureaucracy compliance costs, and much lower compliance costs for citizens and for companies of 10 billion euros. So we need to build trust, we need to place trust in companies, and so there has to be scope for discretion. We need to expand the scope for discretion. An important step is the EU supply chain due diligence regulation, which we need to do that in a low bureaucracy way, and we need to abolish our national act on supply chain due diligence. You said that the barriers to setting up a company are too high in Germany, and we can see that, but that's why the rate of startups has fallen in recent years. And the report recommends a one-stop shop with and that's what we want for new startups. We want a complete one-stop shop which takes all the applications together for setting up a business on one digital platform. And the aim should be to allow companies to be set up within 24 hours. And the colleagues around Carsten Wildberger will be working on this. But we will also be working on this. The OECD rightly points out that Germany has to counteract the demographic-related fall in gainful activity, and that is important. We need to cope with the skills shortage in order to get back to a long-term growth path. So we've agreed on more tax incentives for higher work and working during pension, the active pension. We want to flexibilize working hours for better compatibility of work and private life. And we want to increase the incentives to transfer welfare benefit recipients to work. Companies rightly criticize lengthy and bureaucratic procedures affecting the immigration of skilled workers, and therefore the federal government wants to digitalize the process here and have a quicker recognition of qualifications. And finally, regional development and regional policy. For this government, as for other governments, as for others, this is an important aspect of economic policy. We are grateful that the OECD has devoted a special capital chapter to this, and this government wants to have attractive conditions for business throughout Germany. Our aim is clear. It's a sort of sine qua non for me. We want to avoid political divisions in the country by having equal standards of living, irrespective of where people live and work. This involves improving competitiveness, of course, for companies in all regions. On the other hand, we have our joint task, our regional policy program, and we have structural funding. And we have in total about 4 billion euros we can spend on regional development. According to our statistics, the regional disparities have decreased in recent years. Take Brandenburg, for example. Brandenburg, in the eastern part of Germany, had a higher economic growth last year, or in recent years, than the national average. Federalism and the social market economy, combined with the principle of subsidiarity, are my response to promoting regional development. And then the last point about the world economy. At the OECD Ministerial in Paris last week, we talked about the situation of the world economy. The global uncertainties, particularly through an increase in trade barriers, are creating massive challenges for our economies. The OECD will address this in its annual report. It's important that we continue to advocate for free trade. The current trade conflicts need to be de-escalated, and we need to find good solutions for all sides, because we can see that all participants suffer from the uncertainty from trade conflicts. And yesterday, the World Bank corrected its global growth from 2.7 to 2.3%. The German government, I myself, this ministry, are supporting the Commission in the negotiations with the United States with a view to having a solution as soon as possible for reciprocal and sectoral tariffs and non-tariff barriers. The right response in this situation is also to put your own house in order, to overcome obstacles to growth and to rebuild trust. Competitiveness in Germany has suffered massively in recent years. Costs for companies are too high, and we are working on this by introducing tax relief and incentives for investment. We are cutting corporate tax. We are reforming income tax. We're providing tax breaks for e-cars. We want better tax-based research promotion, and we want to have measures before the summer to cut energy prices. All of this is coming in was adopted in large packages last week, and we'll have the next big relief package before the summer. It's important to send out a quick signal. Let me finally thank the OECD, its colleagues, its staff, and particularly you, Mr. Mathias Cormann, for the important work you do. You make evidence-based recommendations as the most important part of your DNA to give OECD member states support with finding appropriate solutions. We hear your recommendations, we take them seriously, we are working on them. As you can see from our first decisions, thank you very much for this cooperation, and we hope we can continue it. Thank you.
Zu Ihren Fragen. Ich habe schon über
Thank you very much. We will then go ahead with the questions. I have already seen 10 hands raised, and we should use the opportunity because we have an expert on this subject today. So the representatives from the IRD, please. You've just mentioned that women should work more. What should happen, for instance, when we look at childcare?
Questions in German, of course, I understand it perfectly well, but I will answer in English. So firstly, I mean, a key recommendation that we make is that Germany needs to look at its system of taxation. I mean, the way couples are taxed in Germany is one of the reasons why the level of part-time work by women is significantly above the average of the OECD, including married women without children are working at a much higher rate part-time than in other countries across the OECD. So I mean, we do think that Germany will need to look at its income tax, its labor income tax system in order to boost workforce participation by women, which will lead to important participation, productivity, and economic growth benefits. Of course, childcare is an important factor, providing appropriate levels of access to affordable access to childcare is an important part of boosting workforce participation by women. And we also, as part of the educational focus, we recommend that there be a more formal requirement for preschool education than is currently the case.
Wollen Sie ergänzen? Sonst wären wir bei der nächsten Frage bei.
Then just behind you, the gentleman in the red shirt, please.
Frau Reiche.
Ms. Reiche, I'm from the Welt newspaper. Given the rising social contributions, how do you intend on decreasing the costs for SMEs in particular? We have to look first and foremost, what are these productivity costs that are rising. We have now launched a corporate tax reform. We know that it will start in 2 years only and will come into effect in phases. Then we will reinvest profits. And the third step is even before the summer break, we will launch a package in order to adjust energy prices, and we will abolish the gas storage contributions. So the subject of social contributions is, of course, very important. When we look at the figures, we are at OECD average. The longer and the more flexible we can work, the better it is. So we have introduced specific decisions in order to make overtime working possible without having to pay contributions. And then we are also facing increased expenditures and spending in the healthcare sector. This is also something we will have to work on as a coalition. I think it should be common sense within the government to know that introducing social contributions for work completed is a great barrier for us. So we need to make sure that work pays off. And we also need to create incentives for people receiving money transfers. Now, you might not think that this is sufficient as an answer, but these are our initial steps. Ms. Reiche, you've already mentioned the tariff conflicts. The American Minister Lubnik said that the European Union will be the last ones with whom they will make a deal. How does Germany envisage political negotiations, successful political negotiations? Only last week I was in Paris and I participated in the OECD minister meetings where I also spoke with Jimmy Senguer. I also intend to travel to Washington very soon in order to speak to him in person. It is important to do this in agreement with the European Union. Commissioner Šefčovič and his team spoke and coordinate our work with the member states, especially when it comes to the most important sectors. For Germany, it certainly is the automobile sectors. In other member states, it's about the pharma industry. What's important is that the European Union acts as a trade power that includes 450 million people. We really are a heavyweight. We're an important player. We want to avoid public insults. We want to achieve results fast. So please excuse me for not giving you all the details today. We will, of course, present joint proposals with the European Union in order to overcome differences when it comes to tariffs, for instance, to sectoral tariffs for aluminium, steel, for instance. But those are also non-tariff barriers. We need to be able to work with standards. We need to be able to fix joint standards so that products that have been approved in one country can be admitted in other European countries within the European Union. I think all of these are approaches and strategies that we will have to work on in more detail in the coming days and weeks. We support the European Union. The Federal Chancellor himself met with President Trump and had the opportunity to talk about trade aspects. It is also important, just like the OECD does it, to work on an evidence-based approach in order to use all the options that we have when we are negotiating with the US. Mr. Kramer from Reuters. I have a question to Mr. Cormann. Could you explain in more details, because the government is already working on your proposals, where exactly does the government not work on at the moment? What is insufficient at the moment?
I don't think we will make the assessment of what the government will do before they've had the proper opportunity to digest our findings and recommendations. I mean, I don't think that would be constructive. I'm very pleased with the response the Minister has provided today to our findings and recommendations. I know that in relation to many of our findings and recommendations. It wouldn't come as a surprise to the German government when it comes to talking about fiscal sustainability, improving competitiveness, accelerating the digitalization of public services, making sure that the skills shortages are addressed. I mean, these are all issues that I'm sure the government is very aware of, and what we will do when we are here next time to present the next report, we will provide you with the assessment of how the government has performed against this current report at that time. I think it would be premature for today.
Okay, dann würden wir einen digitalen
Then we will take a question from Ms. Löhr from the FAZ, and I would like to talk about the taxation of couples. The OECD Council said quite explicitly that we're not up to date. 2 years ago, the Experts Council had already mentioned this point. Should the coalition keep working on this? So the question is to Ms. Reiche. Yes, I thought so. I think abolishing the couples taxation at the moment is not part of our plans. If you allow, I will try to explain this. The part-time work, when we look at working women, but also when we look at working men, is quite high. And I am not sure that this is related to tax questions. There's also the question of childcare, not only for small children, but also for the elderly. We have the question of taxation in general. So the question is, do people consider it worth taking up a job and working? We also have a different access to work because companies now, but also the public services, have to always consider the work-life balance approach. This has created a completely different perception of work nowadays. At least this is my experience, which I've also made before becoming minister. What we need to guarantee is that work pays off, that people are able to work longer hours and longer in general, and third, that people are qualified enough to take up jobs. We should be more flexible and pay overtime works and not tax it in addition. I think the instruments that are available to us and that we can implement should also improve the situation, but abolishing the couples taxation at the moment is not part of our agenda. Thank you very much. I have a question from Mr. Becker from the Spiegel magazine. Ms. Reiche, I would like to mention the healthcare system and the pension system. The OECD report says quite explicitly that if the costs in these sectors are not reduced, then our debt will rise by 2045 to 135%. So the question is an active pension system sufficient, or should we abolish pension at 63 and increase the pension age? Well, we are increasing the pension age, but are we fast enough? That is a different question. I would say we're not. The coalition agreement and also previous governments have already mentioned that it is absolutely unavoidable to work longer, and earlier pensions are problematic. Many employees would like to continue working, but the businesses need to provide specific offers for that, and they also need to invest into their employees. We also need to create incentives for people to start working in general, so it should be worth it, should pay to work and not to stay at home. And we also need to be faster when it comes to integrating foreign employers in Germany. So the two points: we need to increase the potential of employees, and B, we need to allow for longer working periods. We need to improve generally. Thank you very much. We now need to finish our press conference. Thank you very much for introducing this report, and thank you also to the Minister. Thank you very much for your interest. Thank you for coming.